Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining this morning's PPN Presents session, where we're going to be talking about the word on everyone's lips at the moment, e-invoicing. And I'm delighted to be joined in the conversation by solution consultant Craig Lindley from ITESOFT. Good morning, Craig. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Good morning, Ellen. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, Craig, we are hearing a lot about e-invoicing rolling across the globe in a rapid rate, probably to do with those mandates that we've been talking about. But it's not a new technology, is it? So why do you think it is that business has taken so long to realize some of those benefits?
That's a great question to start with. Yep, you're absolutely right. So e-invoicing is not really new tech at all. The kind of basic building blocks, things like EDI, XML, and digital document exchange, they've been around for decades. In fact, I remember 20 years or so ago when I started with ITSoft in my youth, large manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies were using relatively obscure EDI formats for purchase orders and supplier invoices. But honestly, it never really went mainstream out of these few sectors, really. I think for a long time, businesses haven't felt any pressure, paper and PDF work. They've got processes in place, and it's not obvious what the return on investment is. So the landscape's been fragmented as well, different standards, siloed systems, and the integration costs make people think twice. So I think, like you said, what's really shifted the balance now is regulation. So governments worldwide are introducing mandates, and that takes away this kind of element of choice. So I think once compliance becomes non-negotiable, adoption accelerates, obviously, and then the real advantages start to shine. So automation, lower costs, faster payments, better visibility. So in a sense, businesses didn't suddenly discover these benefits. It's that external push that's made them act. And once they do, they'll realize that there is a return on investment. It's always been there. They've just needed this nudge.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes, we can find ourselves feeling like, well, everything's fine just the way that it is, like we were talking about paper and PDF, for example. And quite often our heads are down in what we're doing, that we actually don't have time to lift our eyes above the parapet and see what's out there until we do get that kind of nudge and say, actually, do you know what, this is coming your way and you need to pay attention. And you mentioned some of the benefits to business just now, not least around making sure that you're not siloed. But are those the main benefits that you see for e-invoicing, or is there anything else that you think that business need to maybe be more aware of, or the number one thing from your perspective that they should latch on to?
I'd say the main advantages fall into three buckets. The first will be efficiency. So automation strips away all this manual data entry, chasing, reconciliation. So saving time and reducing errors there. Second, financial benefits. So faster processing of these invoices means quicker payments, stronger cash flow, and in some cases, you can have access to early payment discounts, which is fantastic. And then third would be visibility. So having structured digital invoice data gives finance teams real insights, which helps with everything from compliance to audits to decision making. So it's not really just about swapping paper for digital. It's about unlocking speed, accuracy, and transparency across the whole process. And I think what's really important here is that these benefits scale. So a small finance team gets time back immediately, but a large multinational gets insights into billions of pounds, euros, dollars of spend across hundreds of entities. And that's pretty transformational.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was at an event earlier on this week, and it's so important to think of e-invoicing as it's not just the technology; it is some of those business benefits that need to be considered. You're not just putting in a piece of technology to make what you already do faster, but you have got those better insights and capabilities that you would never have in a more manual environment. But if organizations are thinking of going down an implementation route, who do you think, from your experience, should be involved in that whole process, and at what stage do you think they should be involved?
That's a great question, because I'll be honest, one of the biggest mistakes we see is companies who treat it just as an IT project. So in reality, it's cross-functional. Finance and accounts payable should absolutely be at the center. They define matching rules, tolerances, how you handle exceptions. Do you have no P or no pay policies, all those kind of things. Tax and compliance also need a seat at the table, because obviously every jurisdiction has its own requirements, and you don't want to end up non-compliant just because they weren't consulted. IT, of course, like any project, plays a huge role with integration, security, and testing, but they don't set the business rules alone. Then you've got procurement and vendor management. They're pretty key, because if suppliers don't get onboarded smoothly, adoption will just stall. And then really you need a strong business sponsor, which usually is the CFO or head of finance, to keep the project on the strategic agenda and secure any budget. And finally, I think the final one is, do not underestimate change management and communication. Internally, staff need training, suppliers need guidance, and clear messaging can make the difference between success or frustration. So the short answer really is, don't silo it. Bring in finance, tax, IT, procurement, senior sponsor, and that's what turns it from an IT rollout to a business transformation. And I'd add this, the most successful projects we've seen are the ones where these functions work together from day one and not bolted on at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that last bit you said there does make absolutely all the difference, doesn't it? Because also it's a part of psychology as well, isn't it? Because if you feel like you're included from the start, you feel like, oh, actually, I've been considered, and my opinions matter to this project. Whereas if you're only brought in at the last minute, whether that's AP or whether that's IT, you feel like, oh, okay, well, why wasn't that obvious from the start? And then you start to get those kind of barriers where people say, well, now why should I help you now that you're an extremist? Shouldn't I have been considered right in the very beginning? So yeah, it's hearts and minds, I guess, as well, isn't it, as part of the transformation project too. And sometimes that can be the hardest part. So I agree with you that change management piece is kind of essential. Go on, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying absolutely.
Yeah.
to otherwise, as you mentioned, you do get pushback.
Yeah,
So
and that's it. And then you get those
forward.
lags and delays that nobody wants, because they can be time and costly, I mean. So going back to the start of the conversation, we talked about some of those mandates that were being rolled out across the globe. And when we consider those mandates, we hear a lot of different terminology in terms of 4-corner model, 5-corner model, decentralized, centralized. Maybe you can tell people listening today a little bit more about those terminologies and what they might mean, particularly if their transactions cross different borders.
No, absolutely. So I think it's useful to kind of break down how the PEPALS framework actually works. So at the core, there's what we refer to as the 4-corner model. So there are 4 players in this chain. So you've got the sender, the recipient, and their respective access points. So how it flows, the sender creates an electronic invoice and sends it to their access point. Their access point connects to the recipient's access point, which finally delivers it to the recipient system. The beauty of this is the sender and recipient, as you mentioned, can be anywhere in the world as long as they're registered in the PEPAL network. Now, in some countries, we've seen a shift to what's referred to as the 5-corner model, also known as PEPAL C2C or continuous transaction controls. And here it's difficult to show with fingers, but there's a 5th player. The government platform becomes the 5th player. So this 5th player in the middle can either validate the invoice itself, by stamping a unique ID or on each one, or delegate validation to certified providers and just act as a repository. So the idea is that tax authorities sit in the middle and get real-time visibility of transactions. And that ties into this broader discussion around clearance models. So in a centralized model, you've got one single government portal. So every invoice that passes through it before it's valid. Italy and India are good examples of that. It's very consistent, but if anything happens to it, everything grinds to a halt. In a decentralized model, there are multiple certified providers who can clear these invoices. So Chile, for example, and this spreads the loads and add a bit of resilience, though the government still has to manage, the moving parts. So I think keeping it simple, centralized means there's one gatekeeper, if you like, and decentralized means there's many. And the nice thing is that PEPAL's flexible enough to sit at the heart of both of these approaches, depending on how governments choose to implement it. But honestly, there's not one size fits all answer. Centralized works really well where governments want uniformity and tight control, like Italy. And decentralized works where resilience and choice are valued, like Chile. The key for businesses, however, is not really which model the government picks, but being ready to connect into whatever system is mandated.
Yeah, and it is a complex environment. I mean, I suppose because these kind of systems and processes have been developed according to the individual country's main drivers, and also over a long period of time. And I suppose as time and technology moves forward, then to some degree the countries that have come later are looking at what the other countries have done and what's worked well, and kind of copying those to some degree. And you're right, PEPAL seems to be gaining traction with a lot of countries across the globe, with France, Germany, Singapore, UAE, and I wondered really what your opinion is about it potentially becoming a global standard.
Well, I don't have any inside information, but you're absolutely right. PEPAL's definitely gaining momentum. So as you mentioned, we're seeing countries like France, Germany, Singapore, and even UAE moving in that direction. And that really helps build this critical mass. So will it become the go-to platform everywhere? Probably not in a one-size-fits-all sense. Some countries will continue to run their own national platforms or reporting frameworks. But what PEPAL really offers is interoperability. So a common language that makes it much easier for businesses and governments to exchange invoices across borders. So I think what we'll see is PEPAL becoming a kind of backbone in many regions, especially in Europe and parts of Asia, while still coexisting with local requirements. And for global businesses, that's a huge advantage because it removes this fragmentation, and it makes scaling simpler. And the other thing is it builds confidence. If you're a supplier in France and your PEPAL invoice will also be recognized in Germany or Singapore, you're much more likely to adopt it. And this network effect is powerful. So while not every country will adopt PEPAL in exactly the same way, it is clear that momentum is building, and I think businesses would be wise to kind of get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I think from what you're saying there as well, that interoperability is absolutely key, isn't it? And I think that once you can unlock that, it removes so many of those barriers to trade that have existed in the past. If you can get business to trade in with that interoperability of data, it makes things much easier. But what about the UK? Do you have an opinion on what might? I know there's no crystal ball, but I wondered if you had an opinion post the eInvoicing consultation, which closed back on the 7th of May and is still in consideration. The results of that are still in consideration. I wondered if you had an opinion on what the direction of travel might be here in the UK.
Yeah, I think the UK is definitely moving in an interesting direction. So as you mentioned, the government's consultation earlier this year, it shows they are thinking seriously about standardizing e-invoicing. So that, not just what formats to use, but how adoption might be phased in, and whether real-time digital reporting should play a role. Right now, it's still voluntary for B2B, so companies can use PEPAL, BIS, UBL, or even structured PDFs if they choose. But I think that consultation makes it pretty clear that in the UK we want a more structured framework, and we could well see phased in mandates in the near future. I think the goals are straightforward, really. Greater efficiency, fewer errors, healthier cash flow, more transparency, and closing the kind of tax gap. And already we've seen these benefits where some of our early adopters have leaned into this. And I think importantly, the the UK is not doing this in isolation. There's an international alignment, especially with PEPO, and the NHS, for example, have already proven it. That it can work in the public sector. So I think my take is this really. I don't think we're going to see an overnight switch, but that consultation is a clear signal. Businesses that start preparing now by exploring solutions, tidying up data, and possibly even piloting e-invoicing with a handful of suppliers, they'll be in a much stronger position when adoption becomes mandatory. In other words, treat this as a head start and not just another piece of government paperwork.
Very good tips there, Craig, and I definitely agree with that as well. I mean, I think that it is an indication, the fact that the HMRC and DBT have raised this as an initiative and have gone forward on a public consultation, kind of gives a degree to which the government is thinking along the lines of further digitization, particularly obviously in terms of e-invoicing, is going to be important to the UK's economy. And how important do you think e-invoicing is to a country's bid to stay competitive, for example? I mean, when you're talking to CFOs, how much of that, how much does e-invoicing come up in those conversations as part of their growth agenda?
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming massively important. A few years ago, e-invoicing might be seen as some back office efficiency play. But now with supply chains under pressure, working capital in the spotlight, and governments moving towards these mandates, CFOs are looking at it completely differently. For many, it's not just about cutting cost; it is about being competitive. If your peers are processing invoices faster, getting paid sooner, and unlocking these better insights from the data that they have, you don't want to be the one still stuck with paper and PDFs. And yes, we're absolutely seeing CFOs bring it into their growth agenda. Why? Because it frees up capital, it improves supplier relationships, and it gives finance leaders better visibility, to make these strategic decisions. I think I'll frame it like this. So e-invoicing, it has moved from this nice to have efficiency tool to really kind of being the baseline for doing business these days. If you're not adopting it, you are already falling behind.
Yeah.
The fastest growing companies that we see, they see finance automation with e-invoicing at the center as the backbone for scaling, the backbone for the future. So it's not just about cutting costs, it's about resilience, agility, and creating this platform for sustainable growth.
Okay, well, you heard it here, folks. If you're not online with or on board with the invoicing, it's something that you need to be more aware of and get the business to be more aware of too. Okay, so we've called this session making e-invoicing easy. How does ITESOFT help make that happen with your customers that you've worked with?
So really, we focus on making e-invoicing easy. So first of all, we take the complexity out, whether it's connecting to your finance system, integrations, PEPO standards. ITSoft ensure that this technical side just works. So your team doesn't have to become e-invoicing experts overnight. Secondly, we tackle data alignment. So structured data doesn't always map cleanly into your finance system. So we've got AI to improve supplier identification, perform intelligent 2- and 3-way matching and discrepancy workflow routing. And that means fewer errors, faster approvals, and again, this better visibility into cash flow. And third, one of our big pieces is we have fraud detection built in. So the platform doesn't just process invoices, it actively safeguards against risk. So it's automatically checking for anomalies, things like different bank accounts, invoices from new unverified suppliers, or activity outside normal business patterns. It flags potential duplicates before they're paid. It highlights suspicious behavior or digital manipulation that could indicate fraud. And all of this happens in the background for every single document we process. So, your finance team is not spending hours combing through spreadsheets or chasing down these irregularities. And I'd say the benefit's twofold. So you're reducing the chance of financial loss, but you also give your auditors and compliance teams confidence that every single invoice is being checked against consistent and intelligent rules. And then finally, we make outcomes measurable. So dashboards, KPIs, reporting tools, you can track efficiency, monitor adoption, and demonstrate this ROI. So for us, it's not just about making invoicing easy, it's about making it impactful. Easy means your IT team's not overwhelmed. Impactful means your CFO can stand in front of the board and show reduced costs, improve cash flow, and better compliance. And honestly, I think that's what really moves the needle for any business.
Yeah, to find that actually have those reports available to you in real time and in such depth makes a big difference. And I was speaking to somebody just a couple of days ago who said that apparently their IT department said, well, hang on a second, we can do all these things that some of these solution providers say they can do. And to be fair to the people that I spoke to, they said, well, okay, then give it a go. And then what came back from their IT department was reams and reams and reams of paper, and data, which may actually have contained some of that information, but it would have taken the person who was working in accounts payable a very, very long time to sift through that. And I guess a solution such as yours does that in real time and gives you that reporting data, importing dashboards, and of course, as you say, protect against fraud, which is very, very difficult if you're just going to be working with Excel, for example.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
And we spoke a little bit earlier on about onboarding and how essential that was, because I know some people on the session today will be listening to us and thinking, well, okay, that's great, and I understand the benefits, but I know some of the suppliers that I work with can be difficult, or I'm not sure that they would particularly understand why we're going down this route. What would you say to those people, and how can ITESOFT help with that onboarding process?
Yeah, I think so. You're absolutely right. So this, onboarding is where a lot of projects can either succeed or fail. And to be honest, the challenge usually comes down to clarity and support. So first, your suppliers need clear instructions, formats, connection methods, expectations. If that's missing, this adoption just stalls. The best approach is to treat onboarding in a structured manner, not ad hoc. So you want to start by prioritizing which suppliers to onboard first, and that's typically your strategic suppliers or your high volume suppliers. Then provide simple practical guidance to them and training where required, and back it up with some support channels internally, so help desks, online resources, live sessions if required. From our side, we handle this heavy lifting, the connecting to certified access points, managing the technical setup, and making sure that all these integrations run smoothly. We can even provide you with ready to use communication templates, training materials, and tracking tools, so you can make sure that this adoption follows a schedule. I think the big key really is to kind of make all of this frictionless. Once suppliers are onboarded, they'll quickly see the benefits, faster payments, fewer disputes, smoother reporting, and that brings momentum, which drives broader adoption. And I think it's really important to treat your suppliers as partners in this endeavor. One manufacturer we worked with recently, faster payments terms were a key selling point of this onboarding communications. And as a result, suppliers were not only willing to adopt, they were enthusiastic about being paid quicker. And some of these suppliers even encouraged others in the network to join, which created, a snowball effect. And that's absolutely fantastic to see.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's right, because there needs to be a win-win, doesn't there? If you're working with your supplier, and presumably those suppliers are with you for a reason, you like what they produce, you like what they do, they're useful to your business and as you are to them. So it's great to have that partnership and to feel like that. So and as you say, you can then get that snowball effect happening, which is great. And I think one of the key metrics that we've often found to be useful as well, if you're thinking about onboarding and you want to know how deep the penetration of that has gone within your suppliers, is the number of invoices processed. So if you're doing e-invoicing, via e-invoicing versus manual, and that gives you a little bit of an idea. Sorry, versus paper or PDF, gives you a little bit of an idea as how well your onboarding process is coming along. So finally, Craig, if you could maybe give some ideas or tips or thoughts on people who are thinking of going down that route, towards making e-invoicing a little bit easier, what would you say to people?
Okay, I'd say if you're thinking about getting started with the invoicing, I'll offer a few tips that might make it smoother and more successful. I think first you need to start with a solid business case. You need to understand why you're doing it. Is it because of a mandate? Is it cost savings? Is it faster cash flow, better compliance, or all of the above? So having these clear objectives will guide decisions, and as you mentioned, it will help you measure success. Second, I think you need to set realistic expectations on timescales. So e-invoicing's not instant, by any means. So you've got onboarding suppliers, testing integrations, and cleaning data. They all take time. So you need to plan for this. Don't rush it. Third, as we alluded to earlier, get your people involved early. So this will be a cross-functional project. Finance, IT, procurement, legal, and change management all need to collaborate. You need to assign clear owners and champions so nothing falls through the cracks. Fourth, I would say focus on clean data. So missing or inconsistent supply information is one of the most common stumbling blocks. So if you can start now. Take this time up front to standardize your data, make sure it's consistent. It will save headaches later. Fifth, I would say address common misconceptions. So most companies think e-invoicing is just IT, or that it'll solve everything overnight. In reality, it's about process, people, and technology all working together. So automating invoices is great, but without clear rules, good data, and trained staff, you will hit bottlenecks. And finally, I would say keep objectives and outcomes at the front of your mind. Track these KPIs, like invoice cycle times, error rates, cash flow improvements, and really don't forget to celebrate these wins along the way. That's important to keep momentum. And if I could add one bonus tip, don't underestimate communication, both inside the company and with your suppliers. Clear communication about why you're doing this and how it benefits everyone makes adoption much smoother. So I think I would say, that the tech is important, but it's the people and the communications that really drive success.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Craig. What a great summary. I hope everybody on the session this morning has jotted all of those down and will follow those forward on the path to e-invoicing, which is no doubt coming our way in one form or another fairly soon. So thanks very much, Craig, for all of those tips. And I think it's, as you say, very important to get that communication right, and also, spend that time up front while you've got it, before there's a mandate, if there's one coming our way. But even if there's not, make sure that you've put that time in place to go through your processes and identify the people, and remember, as you were saying, Craig, that it's a hearts and minds project as much as it is a technology one. So
Absolutely.
Thanks very much to you, Craig, and thanks to everybody for listening today. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.